I just started living for me 100%. There was no question. There was no secondary. There was no I think so many people get stuck in that cycle of living for the others around them or the opinion of others around them or the feelings or emotions of others around them. And then they get so lost on who they're supposed to be that they end up miserable and on the verge of suicide because they just don't know what's right anymore. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they want. They don't know where they're going because they've been looking for somebody else. Well, in basically December 2019, I decided I'm gonna just look internally, and I got very selfish. And not selfish in like I want to take from others. I got selfish so I could pour into others.
Welcome back to another episode of The Burn. I am Ben Newman, and you know every single week we're going to bring you stories of individuals' burn, their fire that ignites why and purpose, that causes them to live with great intention, great discipline to attack next level performance. We've brought you stories of athletes, celebrities, entertainers, individuals in business, other coaches. And today is no different. We are going to bring you a very, very high performer, another friend of mine in the coaching space, and arguably one of the most disciplined individuals that I've ever had the opportunity to meet. And it is these types of relationships that I believe create an iron sharpens iron opportunity. And so I am incredibly excited for all of you. Many of you already know who he is, but to welcome Mike Claudio to The Burn. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Let me start. I just want to paint a picture because this is pretty unique. I know that, you know, occasionally I'll sell books that I write and things of that nature, but I'm pretty sure I've sold more copies of Too Strong than I have of Uncommon Leadership. And
you went on a real kick there.
Hold on, let me go. I absolutely loved your book. And there's actually one excerpt. I'm going to read it during the interview, which you probably couldn't have anticipated I was going to do this. I've literally read it during keynotes. I mean, it is one of those books that just hits you. And so today, I know this is going to be really easy for you. I really want us to not hold back. You know, oftentimes at the end of our episodes, we talk about those individuals that are sitting on the sideline waiting to get in the game. And I'm just continually inspired by your work in the coaching world, making sure that the people you work with, they don't even think about sitting on the sideline. So where does that burn and fire come from for you, Mike?
I mean, like building champions is, you know, I want to say, quote unquote, what I was born to do. You know, even as far back as I can remember, I've always expected and seen more and wanted more out of people than they could see or believe in themselves. Like from like Little League, I can remember like yelling at the shortstop for not keeping his glove down. Like for as long as I can remember, I was doing that. But really where later in life, when I realized how much I had left on the table in my early 20s, because I followed the game plan, went to college, played baseball. I failed out, which was not part of the plan, but I got a job in corporate America, and I did that for like 10 years, and I was miserable. And I had the life, right? I was 24, 25, 26, making 150, 160 grand a year. I was driving the Cadillac, had the house, but I was miserable. Mentally, I was broken. And so my journey out of that hole has taught me what it takes to take action no matter what, right? You talk about standards over feelings. You know, the win fast went off, and I just by chance wearing this shirt right now, it was not intentional. It was a survival mechanism. So win fast went off, and for me was, I have to get out of bed today. I have to not drink today. I have to avoid drugs today. I have to win the next decision fast or I'll fail. And I have to do it regularly to do often. So I had to climb out of this hole because, you know, after I failed out of college, I lost sports. I was a 4-sport athlete in high school. It's all I knew. It was like, you know, 13 months a year, I was playing athletics. And when I realized I had nothing else when I lost it, it took me a long time to rebuild and figure out who I am, what I'm about. And I think very aggressively, I had to learn how to take action, how to grow, how to get comfortable being uncomfortable, how to make changes, how to look in the mirror and be like very disappointed in who I was at the time, but not let it stop me from taking action. I think that's where I learned this mechanism of helping others figure out that the journey's not done, that they're not completed, that there's still a lot left in their lives. And I have aha moments all the time. Like I had a client email me literally yesterday. I've been working with him for 18 months and he had this aha epiphany over the weekend. And like now I see the wheels turning. It took me 18 months to pull it out of him, but I learned what questions to ask, how to dig, how to push, because I learned how to coach myself first. And that's really what I pour into others. Like I loved coaching as a kid. I loved coaching as an adult. You know, I coached basketball, baseball, all kinds of stuff. I loved coaching, but now all I'm doing is taking what saved my life and pouring it into others. And that, like, I can't imagine doing anything else at this point. I physically, like, it's what gets me out of bed. Like the burn is there is to say, like, there's somebody out there right now who's stuck. And the only reason they're stuck is because I haven't met them yet. And that's where like my mantra, my mission, my vision in my life, which pours into my business is I want to make an impact in every conversation I have, which is why I show up the way I do, why I prepare the way I do. You know, if you look at like baseball and football, people have like a similar warm-up routine, right? Because they want that body comfortability, that common place they're used to being. I approach my business the same way. Like I want to show up and feel good and be the best I can be every single call because that person needs me to be like ready to pour into them to change their lives forever.
So let me take you to a certain place because this is what goes through my mind hearing you. I remember when we met, you and I had the opportunity to speak at an event together down in Florida. Mm-hmm. And I watch you on the stage and I'm like, man, this guy has got it. I mean, he's got fire. He's got passion. He just brings it. He's not holding back. I mean, it's the type of speaker. You're the type of speaker that I enjoy listening to. And then we had an opportunity to engage afterwards. Then I go and read your book. And I think right now there's a lot of people that they think because you coach individuals at the level that you coach and you have a business that's at the level that it's at, or I coach people that I coach, or I'm at a level that I'm at, that we don't have these deep, dark places. We don't have pain. We don't have fear. And I read your book and it's like, you have been to the depths of fear and pain. Mm-hmm. I also, and this is pre you squatting 1,000 pounds, bench pressing 1,000 pounds and doing all the things that you do now, looking as incredible as you do to be the example, but you were in a dark place.
Yeah.
And if you could help us understand, because I think there are a lot of people right now that they're probably stuck in that dark place, because sometimes it looks really good on the outside. You had two challenges. I mean, pictures of you and Tiffany like years ago. I think it's the one, I think it's a Pittsburgh Penguins jersey. I'm like, is that my Claudio? And so you had the fear and pain on the inside. You had the fear and pain on the outside. So I'm not letting you get out of this interview with really speaking to people about the hard work you've put in to become an example of what it means to win. Take us back to that deep, dark place, which I know is part of your burn.
Yeah. So it was December 2019. It was when the bottom we'll say, quote unquote, fell out. But like that was just the end of a really long journey. Like I struggle with obesity, we'll call it. Like I was 320 pounds at one point and I don't know how long. I stopped getting on the scale at some point. I struggled with alcoholism. I struggled with women and porn. And like, I didn't like who I was, but I was successful on the outside, right? I was doing a lot of what people thought I was supposed to be doing. I was living the life that I thought people thought I should be living. And, I think there's a number of things that played in this, but in 2019, I got a hernia. I got a double inguinal hernia, had surgery to repair it, which is like one of the most painful things I've ever been through. And like many, I got put on Oxy, and I think the Oxy with, I was very regularly at the bottom of my, my mental, because I dealt with anxiety, depression, self-doubt, body image issues, like still some of it to this day. But in December 2019, I attempted suicide. I I didn't shoot myself or anything, but like I put a whole bunch of oxy pills in my mouth, like ready to just be done. And to be honest, in the time, if you read the book, I kind of coached myself through this. I tell the story of it's how the book opens, and I'm going to tell a story about the book too in a second, but I coached myself through the decision to survive. And it wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't like, hey, I tried it, I didn't go through with it. Now I'm happy. It was like months of like, I would go for a walk down the road, like in January and February, like I literally just wanted to throw myself in front of a vehicle. Like it was that bad. Like I was just that tired, that done. I was that low. I was that like, just the darkness had won at that point, like almost we'll say fully completed the job. Ultimately for me, it was, and like, as unfortunate as this might sound, the reason I didn't do it was because I didn't want to put my family into medical bills. I wasn't sure that amount of oxy would have done it. I'm a pretty big person. I was worried that that at that point in my life, that the selfish side of it, it wouldn't have been enough, and I would have been stuck in the hospital and racked up a bunch of hospital bills. But like, I believe God works in very mysterious ways, Ben, as I know you do. And I haven't told this part of the story very regularly. I'm not sure publicly at all, but we moved in 2019, and we downsized houses in order to help pay off my wife's student loan debt and allow me to invest in my business. During the move, the safe that we have is an electronic keypad. The battery died in the safe during the move. My gun's in the safe. I couldn't get to it. And you want to talk about like crazy and stories, but like God told us to move. It felt natural from the first moment my wife and I had the epiphany. That was like April of that year. We moved in September. This is December. I'm very confident I wouldn't be here if that safe was accessible. And like, it's hard to look at that and not say that's God's work. Like God had his hand on that. But that day, the day I survived that, and I searched for help at that point. I went to the people in my life that I thought were the people that would be there for me. And, for a number of different reasons. Some of it was just like, a lot of people don't know how to handle that situation, right? Like some people just don't know what to do because it's an uncomfortable scenario. You come to somebody and say, hey, I really tried to kill myself last night. And what I realized in that process is that nobody could be for me what I needed to be for me. And like, I just started living for me 100%. There was no question. There was no secondary. There was no, I think so many people get stuck in that cycle of living for the others around them, or the opinion of others around them, or the feelings or emotions of others around them. And then they get so lost on who they're supposed to be that they end up miserable and on the verge of suicide because they just don't know what's right anymore. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they want. They don't know where they're going because they've been looking for somebody else. Well, in basically December 2019, I decided I'm going to just look internally, and I got very selfish. And not selfish in like, I want to take from others. I got selfish so I could pour into others. And I think there's a very distinct difference. I think when people hear selfish, I think they think taking, right? It's mine. I got selfish with my time, with who I would spend it with what I was doing, with where I was, so that I could survive. Honestly, at the time, it was a survival mechanism of, I just have to go all in on me. I have to internalize right now and rebuild me. But I made every decision based on my core values, my mission, my vision. I had to get clear on some of that. Like, why did I survive that? Like, that was a question I actually asked myself. It was like probably March or April of the following year in 2020. Why did I survive that? Because March of 2020 is when COVID hit. And I literally lost all my revenue in my business in like a month. Like I wasn't as big as I am now, but I was doing 25 or 30 grand a month, January, February, March. April, I did 2,500. And this is literally 4 months later. And I was so clear on why I survived that I went all in. Like second quarter 2020, I think I did over 600 free coaching calls because the construction industry got shut down. No one knew what was going to happen. I literally did over 600 free calls in that time period, which led to success, which led to growth, which led to all the other things. But the burn really came from, at this point in my life, I'm here for a reason. And like, that's where all the structure, the discipline, the intentionality came from is, people say like, once you have a near-death experience, you take life a little bit more seriously. I'd say it's 100% true. My prayer is that I can impact enough people with my conversations that other people don't need to get there to learn that. Because the time I'm spending being intentional is the same time other people are wasting being non-intentional, being undisciplined, being lost, being drunk, being high, cheating on their spouse, whatever it is. Everybody's doing something right now that's not aligning with who they think they should be, because they're being dragged. But it happens in sports too, right? Like, oh, everybody's doing that thing or taking that shot or taking that pill, I guess I have to too. But then like you regret it later and it starts to destroy you. And I'm not judging it. Like, everybody has to make their own decisions. But for me, it was, I survived that for a reason. And that's where I have to make an impact with every conversation I have really started. It started right there when I said, I'm here to make an impact, which means I have to focus every single time, because God put me through this scenario to help somebody. And so my goal now is to make an impact with every conversation I have, which is a very big target with very little steps, very short-term focus. I have to be prepared for the next conversation.
Let me frame, let me give some background and frame something. I'm so glad you're going this deep and this much context to how you think and how you show up. But I want to frame it even tighter for everybody. Many people reach out to me and, I want to, be a coach, or I want to take my business to the next level and things of that nature. And, you've come to our coaches boot camp in St. Louis, and, we've had the opportunity to work and spend time together. And it's like, you don't just implement things that I share, because one of my goals in coaching or sharing with somebody who wants to coach to impact others is that there is no competition. You think there's competition, you might as well just stop, because you don't understand what abundant thinking is all about and what immeasurable impact is all about. And so for me, I pour into you, and then you like want to do it like 3-4 times what I even suggest, and then you go and do it. And I think a lot of times people get scared to really take action. And so you don't just take action. I mean, you like take action to the extreme with great intentionality. And so it's interesting what you said, and I just really want to capture it, because you live an intentional life, from your workouts to spending time with your boys, to how you plan with Tiffany every year. I mean, you go into it is extremely intentional. And a lot of people, many of you have heard me say this, they say how great they want to be, but we have a story with their action, and that tells the real story. Your action tells one hell of a story. And so let me just read this part from the book, and then I want you to really dig down even deeper in terms of what be the example means, not just for you and the choices you make, but the importance of somebody identifying intentionality for them in whatever walk of life, whether it's somebody from a construction business that you're coaching, whether it's somebody from another one. I mean, it's amazing watching the growth outside of construction in your business, all the other industries that you're now impacting. It says, but just like sports, business and life are games of inches. One play or even one decision can define an entire season. The challenge of being solely responsible for every decision is scary. And this is why many people never own the responsibility of their choices. This is why many people simply float through life, surviving the day instead of winning it. I am sure you are not one of those people, but we all know them. I'm talking about I love this part. I'm talking about the father who plays more video games than his kids, the woman who spends more time buying workout clothes than doing anything physical in them, the coworker who just can't get out of bed, who shows up late and does just enough to stay under the radar to keep their job. You don't want to be that type of person. So you've now built a life, a coaching model around keeping people from living that mindset, that's a tough thing these days, Mike. That's a really tough thing. So how important is it for you to really empower people to become the example, to live an intentional life that way?
I think the misconception is that you have little control over your life. I think people look at I think victim mentality is more rampant than people give it credit for. Like the weather or the boss or the coworker or the thing. Like there's always something like, oh, that thing happened with my knee. I can't do that thing anymore. Like there's always excuses, and people are really good at believing them. But the problem with that is you might say it and other people might believe you, or you might be winning and other people might be like celebrating you for it. But if you believe this is you and you're here, there's a delta there, right? So if you believe you should be a 9 and you're operating at a 7, no matter how anybody else feels about it, that delta between who you are and who you believe you should be will haunt you at night. It's not in the middle of the day. It's not when you're at work. It's not when you're on the field. It's when you lay down in bed at night and there's no one left but yourself to judge you. When you lay down at night and you recap your day, whether you want to or not, whether you're intentional about it or not, you sit there and you can immediately think of like what you probably half-assed that day. I can tell you right now, I don't remember any of the touchdowns I got. I don't remember. I threw 2 no-hitters in high school. I don't remember that. I remember that play I didn't go all out. I remember that play I could have maybe put a little bit more into. That's the stuff. I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. That's the shit that haunts me. And so I got very intentional, and I help my clients get very intentional with analyzing and adjusting, right? Implementing, you're doing it anyway. Like, and when I say implementing, I'm not saying trying new things or going after the championship. It's just like implementing is like waking up today. You initiated the day. You're going into the day. You're taking some form of action, whether it's intentional or reactive. You're doing something. What very few people do, and I think this happens really bad in business, is very few people look back and recap, analyze, and adjust based on the results of that action over the last week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 2 years. And so when I say, how is your day today? You're like, oh, it's pretty good. And that's the surface level fucking conversations we have these days. That's it. Right?
Right.
But if I asked you right now on a scale of 1 to 10, how did you win today? And I make you sit down and think about it, I bet it's not as good as you thought it was. I bet it's not as good as you pretended it to be.
See, and that's what I'm talking about, because so many people, you get on Instagram, right? You versus you, and look, and it's, oh, I beat myself. It's like, well, no. It's one thing to say what you read on a meme on Instagram. It's another thing to do what you're saying, which is to actually care enough to evaluate your behavior and your decisions and say, did you really? Because if you didn't, at the end of the day, it really is between you and you. And that's one of the things I admire about how you show up. It's one of the reasons why we get along, is because I just believe there's this responsibility that for guys like you and I, if somebody's going to hire us to coach them, to help them to drive accountability, and I have no accountability in my life. I am a fake, I am a fraud, and I cannot talk to you about accountability if I'm lying to myself and I didn't eat the healthy breakfast that I tell people I ate. I ate a fat stack of pancakes, skipped my workout, and hit the snooze button 18 times.
And most people don't have, I think, a really strong way to understand what does a winning day even look like to them. Because they've never approached it that way. Most people have never been intentional about an entire 24 hours. Like, ask yourself, look at yesterday, how intentional were you in every decision you had to make, with how you prepped your food, with how you hung out with your children, with what you spent the afternoon doing. Like, I know you have a lot of athletes that you coach, but I have a really bad frustration right now with how many people spend all day Sunday watching other people live their dreams instead of working on their own. Like, I haven't had cable in 3 years because I got tired of spending hours watching other people live their dreams instead of working on my own. So how intentional were you in every decision? Did you have the extra bite or the less bite? Did you have that extra beer, or did you have that extra conversation? Did you get extra loud with your kids yesterday? How intentional? How did you show up? And so, but people, I don't think have a good to create. Mike, how do I create that? You use the prize fighter day. I've kind of coined it the championship day because it's kind of my brand, right? Just like you do. But for me, it's how are you relating to the person that you see in the mirror, not physically in your head, right? Because if I asked you to close your eyes right now and I said, picture the perfect version of you, or I said, picture a version of you that you'd be proud of, they're probably different. Because perfect to you is externally driven, right? Perfect to you is probably like the fancy stuff, the abs, the hair, the face, like it's what other people would envision as perfect. If I say, show me somebody you'd be proud of, it's likely a different story. It's likely a different list. It likely looks a little bit different.
So let me stop you here for a minute because I want you to address something. I know there's some people listening like, oh my God, these guys are so intense. Why are they being so hard on me? I'm listening to this interview. They don't even know me. I don't know them. And this is becoming really uncomfortable. And so how do you address those individuals? Because at the end of the day, that's true. But the burn is what causes both of us to be intense. The pain of regret is what causes us to be intense. The pain of not always being as disciplined as we both are causes us to show up this way. And at the end of the day, I think we both want people to just do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
And live your life. You don't have to live Mike's life and have a goal to squat 1,000 pounds and bench press 1,000 pounds. I said that again because I think those are the numbers these days. And you don't have to do the things that I do or you do or go write a book. But I think what you're saying is, and I hope people hear it through the passion, is that you have an opportunity to go be the best you, and you have a choice to design what that looks like.
Well, and so I'm gonna prove to you that everybody knows that. Everybody knows when they're not performing their best, whether they know what the best is or not, right? But what I think what you talk about early on is a lot of people are afraid to take action on it because they can't possibly visualize or believe what they say they want could be real. And so I've been using this exercise lately, and I think it works really well. Right now, it's January 31st when this is being recorded, 2022, right? If everybody listening closed their eyes and pictured who they were, what they had, what they were doing, and who they were around January 31st, 2020. Picture it. The life you had, the things you had, the money you had, the people you were around, the way you were spending your time, the way you looked. Everybody I've done this with said, there's no way I could have pictured who I am today. In just 2 years. In just 2 years, that person that was you, January 31st, 2020, could not have pictured what you've been able to accomplish or who you became or who you were around or who you lost or what you gained over just a 2-year period.
Okay, I want to, because this is really interesting. When you started this exercise, okay, and you said the dates, I was like, well, I've kind of been on the same track, but here's the reality. What my mind went to was at that date, I was making excuses why I didn't have to do 75 hard because I had the unrequired. And so I was doing this crazy unrequired work. You guys all know about my crazy unrequired workout. So I was doing it 2 years ago. And at that point in time, I was making excuses. There's no need for me to do 75 hard. So I couldn't have pictured myself today having completed the entire 75 hard program. And now I do these 4 times a year. I'm going to do 30. So it was interesting because in my mind, I was like, no, I couldn't have. So we all
in just 2 years. In just 2 years. So like the journey, what people forget, I think a lot, is the rest of your life is coming whether you're ready for it or not. So why not be intentional with it? So if you're not capable of picturing what is possible for you in just 2 years, then it's incredibly overwhelming to dream. It's incredibly overwhelming to dream. So I broke it down to I have to win today. And I'll get to where I want to be later, because where I want to be is still underplaying what I'm capable of. I mean, I can tell you for a fact, January 31st, 2020, I could not have pictured what's happening right now, January 31st, 2022. Zero comprehension of what I'm doing, who I'm around, what I have, where I'm going, my family. I couldn't have pictured any of it. I just showed up for the last 24 months with every fucking thing I have. And did I fail? Yeah, of course I did. Like, do I have setbacks? Of course. Do I make bad decisions? Of course. I'm not perfect. But what the difference is when you have intentionality every day is you catch yourself in 24 or 48 hours instead of 2 to 4 months or 2 to 4 years. Right? A lot of people get down and there's no checkpoint. There's no checks and balance. There's no way for them to coach themselves out of it. They just, a drink once a week turns into drinking every day pretty quickly if you're not careful or you're not intentional. So if you can't, if just what you knew 2 years ago, think about what you knew in January 31st, 2020, the knowledge you had and what you were able to accomplish over the last 2 years with what you knew then. So if today's day one of the next 2 years, based on what you know now, what could you accomplish? What could you pull off? And what could you do? Not how could you live up to what Mike's doing or Ben's doing or whoever your following's doing. It's what could you do in 24 months if today's day one of the next 2 years, based on what you accomplished over the last two? What could you do? Who could you become? What could you overcome? What could you crawl out of? What darkness could you be? What addiction could you be?
But the key over that period of time is taking consistent action with intentionality to be your best one day at a time. Otherwise, you spend too much time doing what you said earlier, which is laying in the bed with regret, not following through. So you will go backwards if you don't take action.
Well, and then so this is like the final point in what I would call, I haven't like named this or anything, but like the 3 points of how I teach this is I still think it's hard for people to dream, right? There's so much input, so much information, so much highlight reels on social media. I think it's hard for people to dream. So what I say is if you don't know where you're going, list everything you don't like about yourself and take action away from those things every single day, right? Because not everybody can see what they want because like with freedom of money and assets and like where we see like some of our biggest clients or most successful clients are the most lost, right? It's because they got access to everything. When you have a limited ability, limited resources, you can only make so many decisions, right? Because your resources are limited. When that widens, the ability to make decisions more broadly becomes overwhelming because you have more options. And so the power and the weight of selecting what do I want when everything or anything's potential is incredibly overwhelming because now you're taking ownership of your decisions. So if you can't do that, I challenge you to write everything you don't like about yourself and make one action every day to move away from that thing. Because that movement, that separation from the darkness creates light, and light creates opportunity. And that gives you the ability to be free because you're shedding the bullshit in the process to make decisions, to see potential, to run into opportunity, right? There's no such thing as luck. It's when preparedness meets opportunity, right? Well, if you stay stagnant, you can't run into opportunity. You're stuck. So move away from what you don't like about yourself, and you will eventually run into opportunities that you had no idea were out there. Just waiting for you to take action. The universe is just waiting to pay you back for the risk you're taking and moving away from what you don't like. So if you can't tell me what you want, tell me what you don't want. And let's start taking action away from that.
I would encourage everybody from this episode, and you guys all know, and I knew this was going to happen, getting the two of us together, that, this is going to be a little bit longer than our normal episode, but I want you to choose to take action. If you have to hit the pause button right now and take that immediate action, nothing changes if you don't choose to change your thinking and your behavior. I've always said that your success, it's not just about changing your habits, it's about changing the way that you think. So if you pay attention, Mike is challenging you to think differently, to identify some things that are going to cause you to show up differently. So if you have to hit the pause button and then play this thing back. But here's what I think some of you might be thinking. You might be thinking, okay, Mike is so intentional. Like, does he have family time? Yes. Does he pour into his clients? Yes. Does he follow through and do these things that he says he's going to do in his life? Yes. And here's where, Mike, one of the things I appreciate about you, it's the word capacity. And so I'm actually going to go a direction that people may not expect, to really talk about how important it is for you to give back. And this is the way we're going to kind of get to our finish line. You started a charity called A Champion's Shoes, and our family has donated to A Champion's Shoes. We're going to even take it to the next level and donate on an even more significant level with this upcoming year, because you and I both love shoes. It's kind of a natural fit. And so we're going to commit on a deeper level. But I think some people see somebody who gets so busy, oh, they're just so caught up in success. Yet you have chosen to also be very intentional about creating a charity and serving. So if you could, and please do not hold back. I'm giving you permission. I mean, this is like for the people. This is such a good, positive thing in the world. Can you please tell us about A Champion's Shoes?
So the idea came from Tiffany and I. At the end of every year, we do what we call the balancing of our blessings. And like early in our marriage, it was volunteer work because we didn't have any money, right? And so every year we kind of did more and more and more. And in 2020, we were walking with the family. At that time, I have a 4 and 2-year-old, and we were like, we want to get the kids involved, right? And so like not like writing a check, like a 4-year-old doesn't understand the concept of like writing a check and giving it to an organization or a church. So I said, MJ, what do you love right now? And like most 4-year-olds, everyone's like closest to their face. He's like, I love my new shoes. I was like, cool. What if we gave away 100 pair of shoes this Christmas as a family to other kids who can't get shoes or new shoes on their own? And he was all pumped. He's like, oh, I'll get the red ones for him. I'm like, cool. And so the concept originally started from, getting the family involved in giving back, because I want my kids to know how good it feels, because like getting's cool, giving's awesome, right? Like, and I think, that's why Tiff and I always had what we call the balancing of our blessings. And so came up with the idea. I was like, okay, I'll spend $50 a pair. I'll take $5,000. I'll buy 100 pair of shoes. We'll find kids to go give them to. And I was driving home from the gym one day, and I, basically the thought came to my mind is like, why am I limiting this to 1 year? And why am I limiting this to 100 pairs? And that was October 2020. I basically I Googled how to start a nonprofit, and I just followed the steps. People think it's like complicated. It's like, it's not easy. There's a lot of steps, but like, it's not complicated either. It's just like, it literally gave me the steps. So officially started the nonprofit. We launched the day after Thanksgiving, 2020, and between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we raised $45,000 and sent out 500 pairs of shoes in our first 30 days. And so that was overwhelming. We literally were doing it out of our garage, like, because we don't just give shoes. So the whole concept around it really grew for me into like, I don't think there's anything in life that replicates the feeling of a new pair of shoes, because it's not just how it feels on your feet. I mean, you stand taller, you jump higher, you run faster, like you just feel better.
Just think back to like your school days. Like I remember like that was like you got that new pair of shoes. You couldn't wait to go to school the next day in your new pair of shoes.
And so it turned into this, how do we pour confidence into the children? Because these are kids that span elementary to high school, who maybe have never had a new pair of shoes, or have had a new pair of shoes that fit right, or have more than one pair of shoes. And so we put a handwritten note in every pair of shoes that goes out that says, we believe you are capable, go be a champion. Because if you know anything about underprivileged communities, there's not a lot of hope there, right? And so many of them have never been told that they are capable of anything. I have a vision, and you can't really see it right now, but we put thank you cards, pre-posted thank you cards in every box. And so that the kids can show appreciation and gratitude as well, to teach them how to say thank you. But the big part of the handwritten card we send them is, we believe you're capable. Just decide to go be a champion. And like my vision is, if I get one kid out of the thousands of kids we've sent shoes to already, to just pop that in their mirror in their bathroom or something, and wake up every day and remind themselves they're capable, like that could change an entire lineage of somebody's family. And so that goes in it. We wrap every pair. And so my wife and I, with a couple of family helpers, got 400 to 500 pairs out of our garage in the first 30 days. We were literally wrapping our kids' presents like Christmas Eve because we were so busy getting these shoes out so kids had them for Christmas. And that's kind of how it started. In 2021, we raised almost $250,000 and sent out several thousand pairs of shoes. We're in the process right now of trying to hire an executive director because Tiffany's kind of, my wife's been running it, and it's just like the potential is there. We just only have so much time to give to it. So we want to turn it into something. And like selfishly, I've been afraid to spend money in the business, right? But like for the impact to grow, I have to. Like for us to accomplish what we want to accomplish, because the goal is 1 million pairs of shoes by 2025. 1 million pairs of shoes by 2025. I'm going to need to raise approximately $50 million in that time period, because like cost of shoes, hey, if you own a shoe company, I want to talk to you. Our acquisition costs are astronomical. I literally am walking into like, Academy or Play It Again or whatever, and I'm buying like 300 pairs of shoes at a time at retail. It's not efficient. It's not efficient. I need help. So if that's you and you want to be a part of this, let me know. But at this point, it's like, okay, I need to spend some money to facilitate massive growth and I really appreciate you want to play a bigger role this year, but there's a lot of people that are interested in playing a bigger role this year. I'm having a conversation. I had a conversation with someone last year that just pledged $100,000 for this year. That's a lot of shoes. That's a lot of kids, right? If you think of a school, right? A school is 200 to 300 kids. We sent almost 3,000 pairs last year. Like my wife and I and like 1 or 2 helpers. And like we go buy them by hand, wrap them by hand, ship them by hand. It's a very human capital intensive process. And we got volunteers.
I have an idea that I'm going to share with you offline here to have a bigger impact, not just with the bigger checks that we'll write, but I've got a really cool idea.
But so make an impact with every conversation you have. I modeled this nonprofit around the mission that we have as a family. Like I want to build champions, and I want to do it at every level, whether you own $100 million business or you've never had a single fucking pair of shoes. I'm going to pour into as many people as I can in my lifetime, because that's way more important than any amount of anything I've ever had. And you want to talk about success and things and stuff like that, you'll watch me. I'm not the Lamborghini guy, and I'm not against those things. Like those things just don't excite me. Going and like dropping $50,000 on shoes in a shoe store and everybody around there, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm buying 1,000 pairs of shoes. And like the people that understand it, so many people understand the concept of not being able to get shoes and going to school and being the one kid who had old shoes. I want to like solve that problem in the United States. So we buy name brand only, because if I don't think they're cool enough to wear, I'm not shipping them. I'm not against the off-brand stuff. I'm just saying I want to send shoes that I want to wear. And if it costs me more money, it costs me more money, but it's going to have a bigger impact on those kids because they're going to be excited about wearing them.
I love it.
Passion, baby. This shit gets me fired up.
I want to wrap up the interview with this because I think it's pretty awesome what you painted with kind of giving that story of your last 2 years and how nobody's the same. And what's really cool about the conversation we just had is you just really unpacked, whether you know it or not, the different person you become. So you said, I can prove it to everybody. I'm going to share what this story is, but you proved it to us through this conversation. Look at what's happened with your charity. Look at what's happened with your business. Look at what's happened with your health. Look at what's happened in your relationship with your wife. Look at what's happened with your 2 boys. And that's where I think it is so important. And for those coaches and speakers that are out there, if there's any piece of advice guys like Mike and I could ever give, be the example. But if you really want to make a difference in somebody's life as a speaker, as a coach, you have to be the example. And Mike, that's where I really applaud you, is not only choosing it, but actually taking the action to be the example. And you didn't realize you were doing it, but your story you just gave us of the last 2 years, you just painted a pretty damn clear picture to us of exactly what that looks like. And so I can't thank you enough for how you show up It's definitely an iron sharpens iron relationship, and I appreciate you and thank you for coming on The Burn.
I appreciate it. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate having me on, and it's always a blast, man. It's always a blast talking with you.
And as I told you guys, I have sold more copies of Too Strong than I have my books. So we're going to make sure that we link on Amazon opportunities for you guys to get Too Strong, to stay connected with Mike through his company, WinRate Consulting. I mean, the hats, the shirts, all these types of things, like a Champion Shoes. We're going to link a Champion Shoes, like become part of the movement. Everybody should be looking for a charity. There are so many blessings. If you've been, because a lot of people say, oh, I want to become involved in a charity this year. If you've wanted to find a charity to become involved with, here it is. What an amazing mission, because we all remember that feeling of that fresh pair of kicks and putting them on and going to be great in them. So Mike, thank you for your example. Thank you for being you. And to each and every single one of you, thank you for joining us every week for The Burn. I know this one brought a lot of intensity, a lot of fire, but you know what? We all need it. Let's keep fighting this good fight together.